I think the globe kind of just understands that Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He's repeatedly confused the trade deficit and the budget deficit, or at least conflated it for lying ends. He doesn't seem to understand who will pay the tariffs, right? He keeps saying that it's going to be these foreign governments. No, the businesses will pay the tariffs, and then they offset it on the American consumer. And that goofy formula that Peter Navarro came up with has been mocked endlessly, as it should be. But even with this reversal of the most insane tariffs, like, we are kind of screwed regardless because of the level of uncertainty that this created in the market. U.S. Treasury bonds, this is the best of my ability to explain this, so bear with me and feel free to IM if I get some stuff wrong. But to the best of my understanding, they're supposed to be some of the safest investments available because they are backed by the United States government. If there's a lot of demand for U.S. Treasury bonds, it means that global confidence in the American economy is very high, right?
For instance, the great financial crisis, when the stock market was tanking and nobody wanted to invest in companies, people were investing in, ironically, America was benefiting because our treasury bonds were the safe place for all that money to go, the extra money.
Because also the yield is high if the treasury bonds are healthy, the longer they are, meaning you're betting on it's more stable if the people that are betting on this think that you're going to get more of a return if you invest in the U.S. economy long term, right? And when the United States borrows money from other countries, it does so by selling treasury bonds. So the stability of these treasury bonds is essential really to everything, right? Like, it's the foundation of everything in our economy. Our government debt is issued as bonds to the public. And so with these bonds, it's a little bit misleading to people when they see the prices going up, because it makes it more likely, or when you see the graph going up. Here, I'll abandon that for just a second. Let's play this clip and we'll get back to this, the bond story from Fox News. This is Fox Business's Charlie Gasparino, and he's trying to basically throw cold water on the idea that because the market somewhat rebounded, that Trump has outsmarted the world.
From Fox Business Network now. Whew, this is quite the moment. As you can imagine, the art of the deals all over the Twitter sphere right now, as people say, I mean, maybe this is the way he planned it. To John's point, Charlie, about the Treasury Secretary saying, maybe you could say that he goaded China into a bad position for themselves. Well, don't retaliate, things will work out well, he said.
I mean, I want to tell you right now that Donald Trump outsmarted the world. Trust me, I'm an American. I support my president. But that's not really what happened here, from what I understand. And I know I'll get pushback, but here's what it is. First off, we should point out that one of the good things about this is that Scott Bessent is finally in the White House. He's finally leading this. I mean, up until a couple days ago, it was Lutnick, it was Peter Navarro, the Commerce Secretary, the trade advisor, very much hawks. Now it's Scott Bessent, who believes in cutting deals as opposed to, just just putting these tariffs out there and let's be a mercantilistic economy. That's number one. But number two, let's recall what happened overnight. And from what I understand, and I'm getting this from people that are talking to the White House, what happened in the bond market overnight, the spike in yields on the 30-year and the 10-year bond, which showed that people were dumping our bonds. And who were those people dumping our bonds? Japan, the biggest holder of bonds, was selling bonds. That's what I'm getting from some very big money managers. Just for a sec?
So just to stop right there, as I mentioned earlier, the foreign governments, if there's high faith that the U.S. economy is going to be stable, they're going to buy U.S. Treasury bonds. But the yield falls yields fall when the bond prices really start to go up. And you may have heard the term yield curve inversion. This is usually a recession indicator, right? And so that's what he's referring to here. But we can go back to this clip.
Was selling bonds. That's what I'm getting from some very big money managers. China, maybe to some extent, but it was largely Japan and others. If you have a mass sale of bonds, that means people are losing confidence in the U.S. economy, on the ability to do deals with us. And from what I understand, this is what forced the hand of this 90-day reprieve. Now, is it a good thing? You know, are people coming to the table? Yeah. But if you read between the lines, or not even what Scott Bessent said, we have no deals. Right? There's nobody that is really there saying this is what we're going to do. And they paused it anyway. So my thing that said, well, I'll give you this. There is some art of the deal here. And by the way, brilliant move by putting China in the corner. But that's a whole separate thing. Because remember, that's a very difficult negotiation. Everybody else is a lot easier. They do want to deal with us. Whether they want to be, forced into really bad trade deals on their end is a whole other negotiating story. But make no mistake about it, you cannot divorce this decision right here from what happened last night, which was, people focus on the stock market all the time. It's the bond market and the sort of lending markets that's the plumbing of the economy. And those markets were imploding last night. And that's why we have a 90-day freeze. Let's see if those markets improve. Someone told me we had a decent treasury auction today. But if you can't sell your treasuries, guys, and people are unloading your treasuries like Japan, which is, I believe, the largest foreign holder after China.
Just to be clear, there was an auction that just happened a few moments ago that Bessent just referenced, and it was a healthy auction, Charlie.
They are not. Well, that was yesterday. The stock market is not in as great of shape today. So, it's even worse than what they're basically describing there. But it is that he hit on it that yes, it's the bond market that is the most important to look at the health of our economy, and it's really important that Treasury bonds are stable because they have lower returns compared to stocks, which is the casino capitalism that we talk about here. But they need to be trusted because that is the foundation of our economy and really the global economy. And now the markets are basically showing that you can make more money by buying shorter maturity U.S. Treasury bonds versus the ones that are longer maturity. And what that means is that people think you can make more money on short-term U.S. bonds versus betting on the U.S. economy continuously growing as it has throughout our history over like a 30-year bond versus a 1 day or 1 year one or a multiple month bond, et cetera. So it's the bond market is dependent on the people having faith in the U.S. economy, other countries having faith that the United States will find a way to pay people back. And then that translates to the health of longer term bonds having those higher yields. But that's not the case right now. And that's what he's talking about there. So yeah, the Trump administration is going to play with the stock market. We're already seeing what happened. We're already seeing that there was this extremely bizarre spike in trading right before in call volume. Right before Donald Trump made this announcement about tariffs. And maybe we just pull up this video of Schwab here. Sorry to throw this at you guys without saying I wanted to play this, but I just got to this thought. Oh, the link's not there? Okay. All right. Well, there's a short clip, and we'll play it later in the show, of Donald Trump just bragging within the Oval Office about how much money his buddies are making. And so there's a lot of that's happening right here. But
this is fundamentally a freak out about China. Adam Tooze has this piece in his chart book. Did in fact have a certain logic. Shake the world, flush out and isolate China. He continues. At the next stage in negotiations with those who are willing, there is nothing to prevent the White House from demanding conditionality with America's other partners to further target China. Probably all these places that have relationship with China. So remember the penguins and closing the door to indirect imports from China. A radical move to decoupling was always going to be a shock. stock, it was always going to hurt the markets. But you do it this way, where you announce it on the entire world and then just do it to China. He writes, this way 125% tariffs on China almost come as a relief.
And it's just the idea that, like, basically the administration is somewhat like resentful of the fact that China doesn't need us, and that they have kind of onshored a lot of their manufacturing, and they've centralized their trade policy, or not their trade policy, but their industrial policy. And so they have this kind of resiliency, as opposed to all this outsourcing and globalization and contracts that the United States has engaged in. It's made us in a more precarious position that the Trump administration has just exacerbated, because Trump is an idiot.
Yeah, and I think that certain tariffs to support labor and stuff away from countries that have horrible conditions is good. I think this is escalating towards this is a full-out trade war, and I worry that it could be more than that in the future, because we're just, instead of like competing and saying like we're going to use industrial policy to try to compete to be the country that produces the batteries the best, or cars the best, or airplanes the best. What if we just blow up their dams instead, because they're beating us on this stuff? That's my fear about all this.
Yep. This is what I was referring to earlier. The AOC and Adam Schiff have both kind of talked about this and starting some sort of investigation that the NASDAQ call volume spiked minutes before the 90-day tariff pause was announced. Not a good look at all, says this guy. Definitely not. I mean, this is clearly some sort of kind of insider trading situation. We don't know who that buyer is.
When you know the dip is going to undip, it makes it easier to buy the dip and then sell.
Yep. Seth the Lit PhD said, state-issued bonds have been the primary engine of capitalism since the formation of the Bank of London. Arguably the single greatest, most important aspect of the success of the capitalist economy is the bond market. Just want to back you up here, Emma. I work in finance despite my PhD in literature. Thank you, Seth the Lit PhD. Because math is not my strongest suit, and you feel like you have a good handle on some of this stuff. But it's also just crazy how fast the news is moving. Trump really has perfected the strategy of giving people an inability to sink their teeth into anything before he creates the next chaotic moment. But I do think that, like, we're looking at long-term damage to the health of the United States economy, because this bond market is not recoverable, and we're not going to probably see it for the next 30 days. But then when there's there's going to be a bit of a lag, but in the next 45 days, 60 days, a lot of the indicators are that we could fall into a recession. And the inverted yield curve, that doesn't always amount to a recession. That's a bit of a misnomer, but it can be one of the indicators, and also everything else seems to be an indicator.
I mean, it's pretty basic. Like, if we're expecting factories to get made, that requires a large amount of investment. If that's not coming from the state, which it's not, because Congress is just sitting there twiddling its thumbs, it should come from the private capital markets, and those are go to CNN and look up markets and see they are being driven by extreme fear right now. When that is happening, they are not going to be building factories in Bloomington.
That's exactly right. I'm sorry to yes and again, but that's part of why the U.S. companies are hurt the most by this, is because they are the most reliant on outsourcing and contracting out their production. So, like, yeah, I wish that we hadn't reorganized our economy to benefit corporations and given them tax cuts and deregulation, and these trade deals allowed them to create their businesses in this way. But that's the reality of what happened, and they don't have the capacity to onshore, or the willingness, honestly, to onshore this kind of stuff with the tariffs coming first.
Not without government help.
Not without government help.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. I want to welcome to the program M.T. Snyder, Field Examiner at the National Labor Relations Board, Co-President of the National Labor Relations Board Union, Local 20 in San Francisco. I know you're here speaking for yourself and not for your agency. to the extent that the agency exists at this moment. I imagine there is an MT at every federal agency, or vast majority of them right now, going through a similar dynamic as to what you're going through. But give us a sense of what's happening specifically at the National Labor Relations Board, and then what your union is doing about it. And then we'll broaden it out a little bit.
Absolutely. So exactly as you said, I'm speaking in a personal capacity. I'm not speaking for the National Labor Relations Board or the U.S. government, but as a federal worker whose livelihood, whose job is at risk and is under attack by what DOGE is doing. And specifically at the National Labor Relations Board, just last week, Trump fired board member Gwyneth Wilcox 3 years before her term expired. So by doing so, he violated the clear letter of the law of the National Labor Relations Act, as well as decades of Supreme Court precedent. And as a result of this, the National Labor Relations Board now lacks a quorum. So labor law enforcement is effectively halted across the country. So that's what's going on at the National Labor Relations Board.
Did Trump even cite cause for firing this commissioner? Because it's never happened in 90 years, the existence of the board. Did he cite any cause, or was it just, you're gone?
No cause cited.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clear. And all right. And so what is the union doing? And I assume you, as a federal worker, received a buyout proposal.
So I wouldn't call it a buyout. This is more of a scam. And I did receive that scam, and I do receive those updates every day to my email. They are coercive and pressuring federal workers to resign voluntarily. And our union, in response, is encouraging everyone to hold the line, not to resign. And our union has done an incredible job. We have great attorneys who have gone through all of the information provided on this fork voluntary resignation. And there's so many holes in here. It is incredibly legally dubious. And with all of the pressure that is put on federal employees to take this, and all of the fear they're creating right now to encourage people to take this offer, it's obvious that this is something that can't be trusted. And we know that even a very similar email was sent out to employees at Twitter, and those folks did not receive the buyout package that they were offered.
Oh, is that right? I hadn't been aware of that. And we also know there's no money set aside for workers who are just going to hang out until September, right? I mean, there's no budget. It's all just sort of whimsy.
Yeah, it's very strange that someone would consider it efficient to offer paid administrative leave to 2 million federal employees. So that really doesn't, when there's no budget, we're on a continuing resolution through March 14th. And we just don't know the budget that agencies will have going forward.
So are you still getting paid? I mean, I'm curious, as just like as a person who's dealing with this, like, are you calling your landlord and saying, hey, listen, I'm not sure. Is there any way that we can go month to month here on this? Like what? Like I would imagine the pressure that you are feeling, with this sort of Damocles hanging over your head. The National Labor Relations Board, as far as I understand, without a quorum, they can't do anything right now. And so, like, what are they allowing you guys to do enforcement? I mean, I'm not sure. Like, what is the mechanism in which to enforce anything?
There is still work to be done. We still investigate unfair labor practice charges. We can still run secret ballot elections to determine union representation. So there's still plenty of work to be done. But, yeah, I would say the future of our agency is incredibly scary. I joined just a few years ago. When I joined the National Labor Relations Board, I thought that this was going to be a place I could work my whole life. I got my master's degree in industrial and labor relations, and I studied labor law. And I thought, this is it. I want to uphold the National Labor Relations Act. I want to uphold the act that gives workers the right to organize, to collectively bargain, to improve their working conditions. And this is where I want to spend my career. But now I have no idea what's going to be next week. I have no idea if I'm going to be laid off, if our agency is going to be shuttered. Just no clue what's going to happen.
Have you talked to federal workers in other departments? Are you guys starting to organize cross agency, or are you organizing within? I mean, you're in San Francisco. These agencies, you have agencies in all the major cities and obviously all the states across the country. Like, are you guys what kind of organization is going on that level, or I don't know, support groups? I mean, and to what extent can you? I imagine some of this maybe we don't want to talk about, but to the extent that you can, like what's going on in that regard?
Yeah, so the National Labor Relations Board Union is a small independent union, and so we are organizing ourselves and our members to hold the line, not to take the fork scam. But there are other groups that are doing organizing work among federal workers. There is actually the Federal Unionist Network, that is an informal network of rank and file union members that is organizing right now for a day of action and calling on everyone on February 19th to get on social media and post about how federal workers provide services that they rely on. So it's Save Our Services action. We're calling on everyone to, the Federal Unionist Network is asking everyone to post with a sign on how they benefit from federal services. And then there will also be rallies on February 19th at Tesla dealerships all across the country. The Federal Unionist Network is taking the fight to Musk, as he is the person destroying federal worker lives and the services that we provide. So you can get more information on that at bit.ly/SOS action. Okay, so it's bit.ly
LY SOS action. We will put the link to this actionnetwork.org/events, Save Our Services action. We will put this at majority.fm and in the podcast and YouTube description. And just to be clear, this is both for federal workers and for anybody else who wants to talk about how these agencies have helped their lives?
Exactly. Yes. We need everyone to be speaking out right now, because they won't stop unless we stop them. And we need to be changing the narrative about how the American public benefits from the essential services that federal workers provide. Federal workers are nurses providing care to veterans. They are field examiners investigating unfair labor practice charges. They are researchers looking for cures for cancer, right? These are services that Americans benefit from and rely on every day. And so by destroying these, this impacts every American. And so we need to speak out together to make it clear that we won't let the Trump administration attack our jobs and make all of our lives worse.
Have you noticed, and I should say, shout out to Bob Hitt, who I think has your job down in New Orleans, formerly of the AM Quickie here. Have you noticed any change in behavior of employers out in the field, like with the idea of, okay, the cops are gone now, we're not going to have to deal with has that like filtered through yet? Like, are we starting to see, because I would imagine at one point, if we're starting to hear some of the banks actually say, like, we need some services from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and I would imagine, though, polluters are starting to gear up and, like, we can't dump this stuff in the river yet, but let's wait until June. I would imagine all of these agencies that provide safeguards, whether it's for workers or, consumers or, just members of society who want clean air or clean water or safe food, at one point, they're going to realize nobody's coming around, or there's no, we're not going to be held to account. Are you starting to see any of that out in the field yet? Or is it I would imagine, probably too early?
So I would say that, we're still seeking to uphold the act the best that we can. And we can't force anyone to engage in the processes that we have. And without a quorum, the National Labor Relations Board, we, at the board level, we are restricted in what we can do to enforce the act. So, we are limited here.
All right. Well, MT, we will put that link in there. Good luck to you guys. I'm sorry all of you are going through this. And hopefully the courts or maybe we'll see some Democratic lawmakers come up and actually help in the argument that you guys are trying to make, that the federal government provides services and basically holds people accountable for infringing upon their rights. MT Snyder, field examiner at the National Labor Relations Board, here speaking on her own personal behalf, and co-president of the National Labor Relations Board, Union Local 20 in San Francisco. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. What's happening in terms of like the LAPD and to the extent that you're aware of other police forces too, like what is your sense of what's happening with the dynamic between the localities and the ICE? I mean, I think I just saw a piece on that you wrote, the Daily Memo on a mayor who very aggressively, I can't remember the town off the top of my head now.
Bill Gardens?
Yeah, very aggressively, basically he's keeping ICE out or attempting to. Give me your sense of like what's happening in there, and if the political winds are shifting. And, I noticed Karen Bass got out to MacArthur Park pretty quickly, seemingly more aggressive than she was, I want to say like 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah. So LA is so huge, right? And we have so many cities in the county of Los Angeles, and we have neighborhoods. It's a complicated situation. So the powers that like the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, has or doesn't have, other smaller cities can assert more, right? For example, you have the mayor of Huntington Park, who immediately pushed for a policy instructing his local police to, identify masked agents to pull over, vehicles without any plates and identify them, verify and identify, right? It's not going to do much other than like make sure there's no imposters. And they did in fact catch one imposter. He was loaded with weapons. He had the blue and red lights. He had the whole gear on. So they did catch one imposter in Huntington Park thanks to that policy.
That's
Bill
nuts.
Gardens.
Can I just
It
say,
is
like,
nuts.
that's nuts, because there's not many places doing that. And if they're finding a guy with that kind of stuff, this must be going on all across the state.
They're trying to they're incentivizing kidnapping. That's what this administration's doing.
Yeah. There's reports of people getting kidnapped or ransoms. There was another incident where a mother was taken by somebody that's masked up. The report is KTLA 5 covered this really well, was that the woman was being held at a warehouse down by the border in San Diego with a bunch of other detainees, and they were trying to force her to self-deport. Now, they contacted ICE. They got a statement from the PR person over at ICE, and ICE said, basically, this fabricated story, this bizarre tale is clearly made up. We never arrested this woman. We're not holding her down at a warehouse without any concern as to like, well, let us look into that. Is there maybe an imposter trying to do our job? No, they were just like, you guys are fabricating tales, like, and just dismissed it. So it's like, so then who did take her, right? Like, because she's gone and ICE is denying taking her. They can't locate her.
But
so you do have these situations.
So sorry. Yeah, no, I just this is just so important, I think, for people to grasp. Like, the part of what is so scary about what's happening right now is that it's the wild, wild west to a degree, where there are Latino, our neighbors, our friends, they can't call the police, or they don't want to call the authorities, or even draw attention to their story from a member of the media or something like that, because they are fearful that it's going to attract more and more attention. And so everything we're hearing, at least from a national news perspective, seems to me that it's just the tip of the iceberg because of the chilling effect that this has downstream for everybody.
Yes, it's definitely the tip of the iceberg. And it's hard. I get so many tips. I get so many videos. It's hard to verify a lot of them. And some of them we can't share because people just want to inform us and let us know what's happening. But it's really sad. It's really sad. People need to understand we're completely being terrorized in the Latino communities. It's a really scary situation. You're having situations where kids are going out to take over their mom's or their grandma's old tamale stand on a corner because their grandma got abducted by ICE the week before, but they need to make some money and pay some bills. They can't find them in the meantime, you know? ICE isn't really reporting on who they're taking, where they're taking them. So it's taking people an average of like 2 days, sometimes a week or more, to find their relatives who got taken. They don't know where they are. They're being held in the infamous B18, the basement of the federal building right here in downtown LA. B18 is the basement area where they're just cramming people in there. Reports are like 20 to a room with like one bucket as a toilet, giving them water and crackers once a day, not letting them see their lawyers. Lawyers are out there for a whole day waiting to see clients without any access, give up and have to leave. It's really a horrific situation. I think people need to understand that. I think that, and another thing is that they think people are actually getting caught and deported. You look down at the newspapers in Mexico, and they're asking last week they started asking, well, where are all the deportees? We were supposed to be getting this influx of thousands of deportees. Where are they? Well, look at Delanto. They're all getting jailed. Look at Alcatraz, Alligator Alcatraz.
There's too much money to be made.
Exactly.
There's too much money to be made in these detention centers. $600 million for this detention center in Florida. There is no incentive structure to do anything other than to keep them in these detention centers, and they won't end up being deported anywhere until these detention centers are filled up. That's the way this is going to work, because somebody's making, I don't know, $450 a day per detainee that's there. And then it wouldn't surprise me down the road that, I mean, we're already hearing reports, is my understanding, is that there's attempts by ICE now to isolate people that they've picked up, offer them $1,000 to self-deport, and getting them to sign off on waiving all of their rights. And then we just don't know what happens after that, because there's no way that people are going to go like, wait, where's my $1,000?
Right.
Wait, well, you're not sending me anywhere. For all we know, they end up in a detention center.
Exactly. Here in Kern County, just the county next to us to the north, they're about to convert this facility with like 2,100 something beds into one of the largest detention facilities in California.
I mean,
like, why do they need more detention facilities if they're supposedly deporting?
They could theoretically just say, everybody on a bus, we're just going to go across the border.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Have you heard any reports of, I mean, I think it's too early in this process, but the idea of like, detainees in these essentially what amounts to a concentration camps at this point, because I don't know why we say detainee. I guess it's a sort of a more genteel word in some way. But at one point, there's no reason to believe that ICE isn't going to go to these people in these concentration camps and work out the same sort of like dynamic we see with some prisons down south, where it's like, if you want to get out of here, you need to go work in these factories. Like, somebody's going to have to fill these jobs, whether they're in, we just had the Secretary of Agriculture say, like, well, people on Medicaid can take these jobs, I guess, that we're missing. Well, that's not going to happen. Everybody knows that's not going to happen. These jobs are going to have to be filled. And the idea of like, well, pick some almonds for us and then, for free, and then we'll let you go in 3 months. I mean, to what extent are people like sort of like, now with this greater awareness of how bad it can get, are people starting to sort of like speculate about where this goes?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I can't speak as to the people's awareness out there. But what I do know is I'm often in shocked. People reach out to me from all over, from London, from Canada, from other parts of the States, Illinois. I mean, I get people from all over the world that reach out to me, other news organizations, even from people in our corporate media world. I have, I won't say names, but they reach out to me and they're like, we can't believe what we're seeing out over at Lady Taco and the coverage you guys are doing. And to me, that baffles me, that people don't understand the level, the seriousness that's happening here in Los Angeles, because they don't see it anywhere else. They're not seeing it on BBC. They're not seeing it in corporate media. They're not. It's like people always tell us, like, you guys are at the forefront. You guys are leading this. It's like, why is a little taco publication at the forefront of this? Why isn't everybody talking about this? It's frustrating. It's like, great, we get praise. We're on the Washington Post. We're on NPR, and they're like, yeah, you guys are doing a great job. It's like, why aren't you? Why isn't everybody else doing this? Like, why do we have to be working? I'm working like 14-hour days trying to cover everything, and I can't cover everything. Our team is working their butts off. And luckily we have LA's coming out and supporting us in droves. We've had fundraisers. Eva Longoria dropped some money, a match, and we have a lot of support, and we're really grateful and thankful. But at the same time, this isn't something that we want praise for. This is something we want more people to cover and understand what's happening. Sorry, little rant there.
No, I think that is a crucial element of this dynamic, because I think it's also indicative of, like, at these mainstream publications, they cater to what is going to make them money, and it's not necessarily covering a population that is sort of on the margins, from their perspective, anyways. And it's a huge problem, because I don't think that people understand the scope of what's going on at this point, and it's only going to get worse. I mean, we're talking about 10,000. Do you guys have a notion of being so close to this? Like, who are these ICE agents? Because the next round of 10,000 of them, as far as, like, to the extent that I've, know people who have dealt with these folks, had direct contact, it tends to either be sort of like vets who have left the military early, or people who couldn't become cops, or bounty hunters who want to get a little more official. And I can't imagine, I don't know if it's going to end up being prison guards or what. Like, there's going to have to be, I don't know what type of mentality you have to be in this kind of work, as it were. But I got to imagine we're going to start scraping the bottom of the barrel of those people, and that's not going to be very pretty.
I mean, they just got we already know about the budget increase, right? They're going to be the third largest military force in the world behind the U.S. and China. They're going to start hiring agents from everywhere. And right now what we're seeing is we see a lot of plates from Texas and Arizona, those hard-line red states. They're the ones coming over here to terrorize Los Angeles. I've been hearing reports of people that are prison guards getting contracted out. I've been hearing, seeing a lot of that. It's difficult to confirm any of that because they're not identifying themselves. You don't know who they are, where they've come from. It's speculation at this point, but we are seeing a lot of Texas and Arizona plates here. And where are they going to get the new workforce, right? They're going to expand ICE. And in my theory, they're going to go after our local police officers. They're going to go after the prison guard. They're going to go after vets. They're going to hire people out of the military, and they're going to convert those forces into ICE. That's where I'm putting my money on, and I think that's going to happen because what we see in Los Angeles, you kind of asked this question, but we didn't really talk about like the LAPD and the local police, how we see them interacting with ICE. I mean, they all feel like they're all like, birds of a feather. They see each other as police. They all think they're all on the same team. We've seen reports. I've seen them by Dodger Stadium where they park outside of Dodger Stadium to kind of like meet up in the morning. There's a police academy there, and there's LAPD presence there. I seen them wave at each other like, "Hey, how you doing?" I saw a video that Kalo News shared where a sheriff, a ICE agent, went into the sheriff's office, and they caught on video where the sheriffs were like, "Hey, we're glad to see you here." Like they're birds of a feather. And what we saw at the protests here, the No King's Day, and even the protest, it was like 9 straight days of protests here in Los Angeles. What we saw it was almost like LAPD and the sheriffs were trying to like show off to ICE, like, we can handle this crowd, and they went nuts, tear gas, rubber bullets, just attacking the crowds. It was almost like they're measuring their carrot sticks out there. So that's what we see. It's like it's hard to depend on the local police force, and then not to put a blanket on every single police officer. But as an agency, they do see themselves as birds of a feather. That's at least our perception of it.
What and I imagine what happens in California is not going to stay in California. I mean, I think New York is going to be next on the list, frankly. But from your perspective, what are things that we should be preparing for, both in terms of like folks who are in the community, and also just even from the perspective of like a small media outlet, somewhat similarly situated to yours, without the food expertise. But what would you recommend, or what kind of advice would you give us?
Look, I would recommend everybody be ready to document, first and foremost. Document, be out there with your phones, keep your distance, don't interfere, but document and share. This is important. It might not help now, but it'll help later. And at least it kind of lets people know as to what tactics they're doing, right? Like in Los Angeles, we've seen a little bit of change of tactics. Like they'll go out in construction uniforms, or they'll dress like they're day laborers, go to a Home Depot parking lot and just kind of wait until there's enough, day laborers show up, and then they'll call it in and they'll come and raid the place. We see things like that, right?
Oh, so they're basically using like honeypots. Guy shows up in a pickup, looks like he's got a job site, waits for a half a dozen or a dozen guys to come over and start saying like, okay, I need 3 guys to do framing. I need well,
I don't know if they're actually going and like calling them. They just kind of like go and hang out there. You know what I'm saying? They're not really approaching them. But they're starting to send out spotters. That's for sure. We're seeing reports of ICE agents going out and just kind of spotting, taking pictures and reporting. And then moments after that, you'll see like a wave of trucks come in. I recommend people also mask up. Honestly, they're starting to use facial recognition. Anytime observers come out, so like in Los Angeles, there's a good rapid response network. There's like 1,200 people in a rapid response network. It's really complicated. It's really well organized. So when people call these numbers, it goes through the channels, and then they get the closest local people to go out to like a Home Depot. Hey, ICE was spotted here. Go verify. So what they're starting to do, they're starting to go after these observers, and they're starting to take pictures of them. They're using facial recognition on their phone. The ICE agents are doing this. So be careful with your identities, because we're starting to see moments of retaliation here and there. Yesterday in Van Nuys, they took 4 people, accused them of trying to sabotage their tires with some nails. So be careful with that. I'd say protect your identities, protect your faces if you're going to be doing that. It's a form of warfare, honestly, is what we're seeing. So protect yourselves, document everything, have numbers ready, have numbers of somebody to call, whether it be a lawyer or a family member, because if you're there in a situation, you could be taken. They do take citizens and then release them later. Especially citizens that are in the area and they start documenting or want to speak up for somebody. So if you're a U.S. citizen, don't think you're safe, especially if you're brown. They are racially profiling.
All right. Well, folks can go to lattaco.com to find Memo's daily memo and other stories about what's happening in L.A. And you guys also have, do you have like an apparatus to report sightings or anything like that?
Yeah, we have our hotline is an email, tips@lattaco.com. It's really simple.
Tips@lattaco.com. Memo, sorry. Appreciate the work you're doing. And thanks for taking the time to walk us through this stuff. Love to check back in with you, sometime in the future, see how you guys are doing. And any support, folks can find a subscribe and a donate link there as well.
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you for bringing attention to this and having me on. Appreciate the show.
Of course. Thanks, Memo.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. Trump announced 25% tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and 10% on China. It was in addition to the existing 10% on Chinese goods. As of now, it is unclear if he's just going to end up issuing waiver after waiver. Here's Fox News yesterday. Watch as the Dow goes down. Now, this is funny to watch, unless, of course, your pension is invested in this and you're about to retire. Also, it's a good teachable moment for people who are like, we need to put our money in the stock market instead of Social Security.
Yeah.
All our money. Why isn't all our Social Security money in the stock market? Now, I imagine it's going to bounce back up at one point, but we'll see. But here is Trump announcing the tariffs yesterday. Stock market is plummeting. And the real problem, of course, is going to be that there is going to be real inflation for people. And these tariffs are going to function like a regressive tax.
Yep.
Because they're going to raise the price of goods. This is just like a VAT. Just like using a sales tax as a mechanism in which to get revenue. Because rich guy, poor guy, both got to buy a car. If the car is now $1,200 more expensive on average,
which is what the reporting says it may do,
as a minimum, it is more of a percentage of that poor guy's net worth than that rich guy's net worth.
That's why flat taxes in general are so insane, but it's why the sales tax in and of itself is regressive, because it affects poorer people more. This is just a compounding sales tax, essentially.
Exactly. And here is Donald Trump announcing it, and watch the Dow.
I'm a huge fan of Ronald Reagan, but he was bad on trade, very bad on trade. He allowed a lot of people, a lot of businesses to be taken. So I say that with due respect, because he was so great on other things, but he was bad on trade. We are setting records right now, records like nobody has ever seen before. When you have companies like this coming in, and almost 40% of their company in one signature is going to be devoted to what he does, which is one of the most important businesses in the world. That's an unbelievable thing. When Apple now is going to start building all of their plants here.
Doubtful.
Goes down to 177.
I mean, people put the Curb Your Enthusiasm music to it. It would be funny if it didn't harm us all.
Yeah. I can't help but think that, and this is maybe a little bit conspiratorial, but it does look like they're driving us toward a recession. just headlong.
The Atlanta Fed, like you said yesterday, is predicting one. We heard from Kowalski in Nebraska, our farmer friend, saying that wheat futures are price of wheat has dropped significantly, which is strange when you're not at harvest, because that means that the futures are down. Cost of oil is down, which means that people our economy is starting to slow. We'll see. But this is the thing, is that, people have said, like, what are they thinking about? Like, why would they do this? I just don't think that the normal rules that we apply to politics are operating here. Because I don't think Elon Musk cares. I think he is completely shielded from any type of public backlash. I'm not sure that Trump cares. I think they're confident that they will be able to win the election one way or another 4 years from now. And certainly, like, the lawmakers are just sitting there like deer in the headlight, because there is an unlimited amount of money that can be deployed against them in the primary and for them in the general.
And tariffs can, when they're applied to specific industries and being targeted, it's there. They can incentivize onshore manufacturing of certain goods. Say, if you want to be competitive with a Chinese company that doesn't have strict labor laws, the idea that Apple's going to manufacture iPhones here, please. That you can compete with them by raising their prices with tariffs so that our products here are sold more. But to do it across the board like this just functions as a regressive tax on the poorest people, so that the billionaires can keep getting richer, because a lot of them, they're just doing crypto speculation. Well, that's outside of all of this.
That's the thing, is people like Warren Buffett and private equity, and you see a lot of this crypto speculation because there's no good investments. Well, they're sitting on billions of dollars of cash, and will go on a shopping spree the second that all of this stuff crashes. And so they feel fine about it. Mm-hmm. They don't care about it because they are looking forward to the clearance sale.
Yeah. Can you pull up this budget
Kowalski's clarified its corn futures are down.
So, oh, yeah.
Even though we're 6 months away from harvest.
This is just such a helpful thing that I think the Yale Budget Lab did, that just even these top key takeaway points at the start here, that they've done a model of the planned 25% Canada and Mexico tariffs. Just scroll down a little bit.
And again, like Emma says, if you have tariffs that are targeted in certain industries that you want to build and give an advantage to within this country, it makes sense. But when you blanket a country for no reason, with no ask, what's the ask of Canada?
And with no, now, you're not trying to develop any of your own industry.
On the day that he imposes the 25% tariff on Canada, because lumber is going to skyrocket, he also, Trump, just a day or two ago, basically said that, you can log the hell out of our old growth forests in this country. Huge swaths of U.S. forests are ordered to be cut down by Trump. I don't know his ability to do so. I imagine there's going to be lawsuits because endangered species law shield about 400 species in national forests, including bears, owls, salmon. The future of some of America's most prized forests now appear uncertain. Under Biden, the U.S. committed to protecting the last fragments of old growth forest. Obviously, these help for global warming. They soak up carbon dioxide. But Trump has all changed that. His, do you know who Biden, and we'll get back to the tariffs in just a second. Sorry.
No,
Biden's leader of the Forest Service was? It was a guy named Randy Moore. He was the first black person to lead the Forest Service, but he was a soil scientist.
Sounds qualified.
Sounds qualified, doesn't he? The new guy who is leading the Forest Service was the vice president of the Idaho Forest Group. Oh, well, I mean, so the guy knows forests, which incidentally is a company that chops down wood and sells wood.
Yep.
So literally putting the industry that you have the Forest Service to protect our forests from in charge of management of the national forests and millions of acres of land.
But that's connected to this because of how much lumber we import from Canada in particular.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
is that we're, and so we're going to destroy our forests to justify Donald Trump's 25% tariff on Canada.
Yeah. And just because I think this can be obscure for people, just because Trump is bringing back Gilded Age style politics that haven't been relevant in quite a while. So they've modeled this. The Budget Lab modeled the total effects of the plan, 25% Canada and Mexico tariffs, 10% Chinese tariffs. Trump already imposed 10%, so this is additional. The policy is the equivalent of a 7 percentage point hike in the U.S. effective tariff rate, raising it to the highest since 1943. The price level rises by 1 to 1.2%, the equivalent of an average per household consumer loss of $1,600 to $2,000 in 2024 money. This also would hurt GDP growth, it appears. In the long run, the U.S. economy is persistently smaller. I care less about that. And it points out, tariffs are regressive taxes. Losses for households at the bottom of the income distribution would range between $900 and $1,100. But that is obviously, as we say, proportionally harder, and electronics and clothing and motor vehicles and food are going to be affected. But figure 3 is, I think, really helpful here too in envisioning that. This is the distribution of the effect of the 20% tariffs on China and 25% Mexico and Canada tariffs, and you can see there.
Different shades are for the limited retaliation, and then the other is the full retaliation. So, and it appears that at least China and Mexico, or I should say Canada, are gearing up for a full retaliation. But we shall see.
Either way, this is how the Democrats need to frame this is that this is a tax on the poor and the middle class. Straight up. Instead of increasing taxes on the wealthy, which they are now cutting, according to the Republican negotiations in the House and the Senate, they're going to try really hard to do that. They are putting that on the backs of people going to the grocery store, people buying a car, people buying a cell phone. That is where they're trying to raise this revenue from. And it's not even the most effective way to do it, but it's also even more taxing on lower income people than the tax cuts would be alone for the wealthy that they're already discussing in the House and Senate. It's a compounding effect. This is just a way to continue to drive income and wealth inequality. Yeah. And I really do think you're onto something about how this won't affect the people that matter, these billionaires in the Trump administration, because they're all in this speculation bubble outside of the practical realities of goods and services and needing to buy things to feed your family or to put a roof over your head. If this really does go into effect, and he's not just using this for some weird negotiating purpose, it will be devastating. And the Dow is not overreacting.
Which, by the way, he says we're doing this for a couple reasons, the fentanyl stuff and immigration issues, but then also it's also about our trade imbalance, which kind of shows that maybe the other things are just mentioned just to have
of course the amount of fentanyl that comes across our Canadian border is infinitesimally small.
And Post-Coconut Clarity writes in, but I care less about the GDP thing. Yeah, I do know what GDP is. My point is that GDP isn't always the best indicator of how lower and middle income people are experiencing the economy. That's why it was just a little less interesting to me. But sorry, keep going.
I mean, I don't, outside of using it as a way in which he can give gifts to his friends in terms of waivers, it's unclear to me what they think is going to happen from this.
I'm curious how Elon's businesses are implicated, because if he crashes Detroit and Elon gets scot-free somehow, it'd be really a bad outcome.
Tesla's having some problems apparently with
hope
its stock because people aren't buying Teslas anymore because they don't want to be associated with the guy who gives all of his heart to everybody.
Well, they're not buying Teslas. They shouldn't buy anything. Do the tariffs.
I am seeing, and look, you know, there's a lot of people who bought Teslas because they were like, this is electric vehicle. That's good. I'm going to help the environment. And so they did it with the best of intentions, which is why I don't believe that you should deface these vehicles. Although I have seen flyers going around with pictures of Elon Musk giving his Nazi salute and people putting them in the windshield, wipers, like putting it on the car just to remind people. So I think it's okay to make people feel bad about their car. Maybe they'll sell it or flood the market with used Teslas.
Well, you can't resell Cybertrucks. That you have to pay back the price difference to Elon for something like that. But one Cybertruck I did see, which I think Cybertruck is like
Cybertruck. I feel a little bit less inclined to.
But I saw one guy
give dispensation to
Toyota across the back of his Cybertruck, which is very funny.
That is funny. That's funny. You got to give it props for that. Let's see. Are we getting any of these clips, or should we move on? Oh,
well, you want to talk about Social Security, right?
Oh yes. We have somebody who listens to our show who has some inside information. We've helped connect her to some people who can disseminate that. But there are insiders who are talking about what's going on at Social Security right now. And the Government Executive is a sort of trade magazine that we keep an eye out. And there is a real sense within the Social Security Administration. Yesterday, we heard from Martin O'Malley, the former administrator of the Social Security Administration, also the guy who I believe could have won in 2016. He could have beat Trump. That there is a full-on assault on Social Security Administration workers. And understand, particularly in the context of the low information voters who voted for Trump, but just broadly speaking, Americans know very little about how their government works. I would be surprised, or wouldn't be surprised, if a significant percentage of people who are on Medicaid are not aware that the federal government created Medicaid, pays for Medicaid. I don't know what that number is, 10, 20, 30%, 40%. And I don't, it would be nice if we had an electorate and a population that was aware of its government more than it is and that have more interest. But it's not necessarily the easiest thing to get savvy about this stuff. You could listen to this show, I guess, particularly if you're interested in Social Security. But aside from that, Social Security Administration in recent days has initiated a flurry of actions aimed at decimating its workforce, and that Democrats warn are an effort to sabotage the agency and prepare to privatize its functions. The reason why you inhibit the Social Security Administration is the same reason why they love to complain about the DMV. Now, my experience at the DMV has never been as painful as my experience at the cable company. Never. It's never going to come close.
How about with your health insurance company?
Or the amount of work that I put into my private health insurance. It's literally a second job. And DMV, sometimes you go, it's crowded, depending on which city you're in. But they know what they're doing. You get in there and you get it done. I've waited for like an hour at cable just to return my cable box. But the point is what they want to do is they want to make Social Security dysfunctional. They want to drive a wedge between Social Security and the general population. It's the most beloved of government programs. After a rash of abrupt retirements of senior leaders across the agency last week, the agency on Friday confirmed that it's seeking to shed 7,000 employees, which would bring its workforce down to 50,000 people. Now, that's approximately off the back of the book. If you're talking about let's just call it a 60,000 person or 57,000 person agency, to get rid of 7,000. You're talking about over 10% of the population. Last fall, the agency hit a 50-year staffing low after congressional Republicans refused to agree to append the agency's funding to account for fixed cost increases as part of continuing resolution to keep agencies open. In other words, they're renting buildings. The buildings prices have gone up. Everything's gone up in terms of inflation. I don't know. Their paper clips may have gone up. Their computer software costs may have gone up. Their computers, they may have had to buy new computers, have gone up. 50-year staffing low. 50-year. And now they're going to cut another over 10%? The agency will consolidate its current 10 regional offices down to 4. So they're cutting their regional offices by greater than half. Incidentally, boomers are, we have one of the biggest contingencies probably that we've had in the history of the country on Social Security right now. Musk's Doge operatives have canceled leases for 45 field offices across the country, as well as the Office of Hearings Operations in White Plains, New York. We're watching the direct assault on the agency that provides perhaps the best functioning and the most beloved social insurance program we have in this country. And it's all being done without authorization, without having to take a vote, without Americans having a single say in it. And ding-dongs out there can pretend that Donald Trump had a mandate, whatnot. I dare them. I dare them to have Donald Trump go up and national television say, we are really cutting back on Social Security.
He won't.
No, he won't.
In the same way he wouldn't endorse Project 2025. It's almost like the guy is a sociopathic liar. And it's been proven to us over the past 10 years of his political career. He will lie and say anything in public and do whatever the hell he wants in private. He may try to justify it on the back end. But basically Mike Johnson is telling him our members are concerned about the optics of touching that third rail, cutting Social Security and Medicare, what's the most expedient way for him to do it? King Trump, using the Russ vote. I never remember what it is. Russ vote method of just gutting it from the administrative state side.
There's also a fun story about Russell Vogt trying to shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and then realizing he's been caught and it's illegal and a judge is telling him you can't do this. And now they're pretending that they never tried to shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And what are you talking about? Except for they put it all in writing.
Yeah. It's the same thing with Elon Musk's lawyers arguing he's not leading Doge. Like, are you joking?
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.
So today, the Trump administration fired hundreds of Federal Aviation Administration employees. A functioning Democratic Party would be putting out ads of planes nosediving and blaming the Trump administration. But we'll get to like how Hakeem Jeffries can't even call on Eric Adams to resign, maybe later in the show. But
this is what it's like to run a country like a business.
Yeah, right.
And business leaders are psychopaths that actually don't know how to create things. People who actually create things are people who work and are being laid off.
It's an efficiency model that has already been failing our air safety. Employees that are set to be fired are probationary employees, but they are really important for air traffic control infrastructure. They're not the air traffic controllers yet, but those have been in short supply for years. The air traffic controllers have been raising alarm about being overworked and understaffed and all of the safety concerns that come from it. And in reality, this is not about government efficiency or cutting costs. This is to benefit one man. I bring you this article from Politico right after the election that just within the first 3 paragraphs accurately summarizes Elon Musk's beef with the FAA. The Federal Aviation Administration has spent years tangling with Musk's SpaceX for violations related to its operations, including multiple incidents when the company launched rockets without approval. During the past year, the agency proposed fining SpaceX $633,000 and for twice using plans the agency had not greenlighted, and forced the company to idle its launch pads in Texas for months because of a pending Fish and Wildlife Services review.
Good.
And go fast, break things Musk has responded with scorched earth. He used his social media megaphone to threaten and to sue the agency for regulatory overreach, accused it of politically motivated behavior, taunted the FAA with crude humor, and poked at the agency's rules, which he says moved too slowly to meet his goal of getting human civilization to Mars. I mean, this is a lunatic. But, you know, he's also saying this kind of thing because acting like you have these lofty ambitions is a great way to cover for the fact that you're just like a petty little man who is going after the FAA over a $633K fine when you're the richest billionaire. This gives you, world's richest man, this gives you an indication of how petty these guys are, how sociopathic you have to be to accumulate this kind of wealth. Because that $633,000, oh well, he's going to teach us all a lesson and deregulate our air spaces because he wants to shoot his toys into space, into our atmosphere where it could fall on top of us whenever he wants. And so because he doesn't get to shoot his toys into space where they could fall on top of us whenever he wants our air traffic to be much less safe. He wants to punish the agency, and Donald Trump is all on board with it. I mean, all they do is fly private. They may not have to worry about this in the same way that we do. But let's watch Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, endorse Elon Musk's efforts over the weekend, calling him a revolutionary. What's incredible about this is he's endorsing the destruction of his own branch of government, which is supposed to have the power of the purse, and going on his knees and saying, Elon Musk, here you go, take all of my power.
You say revolutionary. Like, what is a revolution? It's when the who controls power is changed. And Mike Johnson, if he's the revolutionary, you're the one who's being usurped, you idiot. What's the point of having y'all if we're just going to let the big billionaire who's a friend with the executive do everything?
Here he is on with Mark Levin explaining why this is a great thing.
I want to ask you another question related to Elon Musk. They turn him into this boogeyman. Why do you think they love multi-billionaire George Soros, who has used the various instrumentality of the government to acquire radio stations?
All right, hold on. Okay. So Elon Musk, they're about to do a whataboutism. This is a Republican staple in order to obscure the fact that even if you want to go apples to apples, Elon Musk buying the top journalistic communications platform, Twitter, and trying to and shitificate it and turn it into a bank.
Being offered Twitch or TikTok, sorry.
Yeah, and has had already more of an effect than what he's describing about Soros. But if George Soros was brought in as an unelected billionaire to tinker with the Treasury and cut government agencies under the Biden administration, we would be raising hell about it. That's not what's happening. All right, start from the beginning.
I want to ask you another question related to Elon Musk. They turn him into this boogeyman. Why do you think they love multi-billionaire George Soros, who has used the various instrumentality of the government to acquire radio stations, who spends tens of billions of dollars throughout the years, he and his son, to influence our government, to insinuate themselves in governmental decisions, to elect prosecutors who refuse to prosecute and so forth? That's their sugar daddy. That's their guy. But when it comes to Elon Musk, they want him criminally investigated. They believe he doesn't have any role in anything and so forth and so on. Do you see this as complete hypocrisy?
Complete hypocrisy. And what Elon is doing is heroic. You used the word in the opening monologue. Exactly right. This is an heroic effort. He is bringing common sense and transparency and sunlight to the federal government, to the bureaucracy, to what many of us refer to as the deep state. And this is what he and I were talking about just...
All right. We're just going to take this piece by piece. The transparency... All of this is publicly available. Because the government doesn't run as a corporation, how we tax and spend our money is listed and is publicly available. Particularly in this instance, Congress has the power of the purse. It's signed into law by the president. And because of the Constitution, but reiterated in the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, it is abundantly clear that once Congress decides to spend this money, the president does not have the legal authority to say, I'm not going to do so, let alone an unelected billionaire who's just strolling into the Treasury and asking for all of our information. Keep going.
On Monday night at his office, I said, Elon, I am so excited about what you are doing, what you are uncovering. I said, you think of this as a scientist and a data analyst. I think of it as a constitutional law attorney and historian. Elon, what we are going to be able to do through this effort is restore the original intent of the framers of the Constitution. What they had in mind is a small federal government that was closely monitored and had heavy oversight by the duly elected representatives of the people. The challenge we've had here in recent decades is that members of Congress, these representatives, have not been able to do that job well. The oversight job has been hindered because the deep state and the bureaucracy has not turned over the data. They wouldn't give us the information we were seeking.
So why'd you pass the bill?
This because it was hidden.
The data, dude. This is supposedly your responsibility. I mean, I'm being redundant here. Go back just like 10 seconds because I want to hear how this supposed constitutional scholar uses the fact that his power is being currently usurped by the man's richest person. Like, why even have congressional representation if their job is just completely secondary?
Why would they negotiate bills?
Right. You know why? When that data that he's referring to comes out in the wash is when they're doing these negotiations. He knows he's lying. Keep going.
We've had here in recent decades is that members of Congress, these representatives, have not been able to do that job well. The oversight job has been hindered because the deep state and the bureaucracy has not turned over the data. They wouldn't give us the information we were seeking. We didn't know all this because
why
it was
pass
hidden.
The bill?
Now Elon has cracked the code. He is on the inside of the belly of the beast, Mark, and he is unveiling and revealing all these things that we knew intuitively were happening, but we didn't have the evidence. This is a game changer. It is truly revolutionary, and we're going to restore, ultimately, through this process, the federal government to the original intent of the founders. And that's what has the big government, socialist, liberals, and Democrat Party apoplectic because they're afraid of what the final result of this is going to be. And it's very exciting for the people.
You're so right. If you love the country, you love the Constitution, you love small r republicanism, you're cheering these guys on. Mr. Speaker, thanks.
Sure. Well, it is revealing at the very least. Elon Musk tweeted this earlier this morning or late last night. I don't know. Responding to Secretary Sean Duffy of the air traffic control here, transportation secretary. He says below, the safety of air travel, if we could just scroll, Bradley. The safety of air travel is a nonpartisan matter. SpaceX engineers will help make air travel safer. So this is the end game. Putting his own cronies at the FAA because they dared to levy, never know which is the right way to say it, a $633,000 fine against SpaceX and probably some other burdensome regulations for the man-baby billionaire who wants to basically have no rules by evil daddy government.
And no investigation. Somebody just got smacked by a self-driving car to death in Arizona. That was going to be a National Highway Traffic Safety Administration investigation. This is a power grab by a guy who needs to be, like Bill Burr said, put down like a rabid dog.
I mean, like, that's such a great point about, oh gosh, what did you just say?
National Highway.
Yeah. This came out, it was a study in one of those trade publications and didn't get a ton of press, but that the Cybertruck is infinitely more deadly than the Ford Pinto.
Who could have thought?
And the way that Mike Johnson talks about algorithms, like, you know, he's an 80-year-old, as if you're just trying to fool your voters into thinking you're smart, like the government is run on an algorithm. They're spreadsheets, idiot. You've gone over the budget. That's a part of your negotiation process. He knows that he's lying, but you could just say algorithm and people go, ooh, it's like God. It's like, you know, spirituality. It's mystified. No, these are just the tabulation of how our government spends its money after Congress allocates it. They have not produced one piece of evidence about the fraud and abuse that they're talking about, except to point to publicly available data that we already have.
Yeah, this is just Twitter files for the government, a big show where they purport to have done some sort of revolutionary transparency, but it's all bullshit, fluffed up by bot journalists. And they're just, you know, it's very obvious, I think, what we're seeing.
But I'm very terrified about air safety right now. I mean, to have this be the reaction to these really horrifying incidents of plane crashes should really freak people out. Our air traffic controllers and those systems were already at a breaking point. And now the Trump administration is choosing to make their jobs harder. Why? Because the billionaire daddy oligarch wants his buddies at the FAA as opposed to career public servants.
And more money for capitalists to play with so they don't have to get taxed for, when really we are massively not investing in the right things. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all these billionaires have way too much money, and we're cutting to the bone things like not even schools. Like, I mean, we've just been cutting schools to the bone for decades, but air traffic safety, this is psychopathy, but it's what you would expect from a corporate class. I mean, I saw Mark Cuban saying, hey, we got to be smart and we should actually go look at it again. You cannot trust a single one of these people. Billionaires need to be kicked out. We need to get rid of them before this decade's over.
Yes. And if I'm concerned about our inability. Right. Exactly. I'm concerned about our ability to faithfully execute an election for the presidency in, less than 4 years. But if we elect somebody who's a Democrat, they have to come in and act as with the same urgency that Donald Trump is acting, except in the reverse, to go after the billionaires in an aggressive way that targets their wealth and makes it impossible for this to happen again, redistribute it, and make it so that we can permanently safeguard our regulatory agencies from this happening again, because this is doing untold damage.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. Let's talk about this tariff thing. This is getting, bizarre on some level. Donald Trump passes essentially a change to NAFTA back in 2020, called it the USMCA. And it was a trade deal with Mexico and Canada, who, as far as I know, have been following that trade deal. I'm sure there's some disputes now and then. They get resolved, but and so on. And then he comes into office and he's like, I don't like that trade deal that I signed. I'm going to slap 25% tariffs on them. And then he says, I'm going to wait. I'm actually going to do it on Tuesday, but now I'm going to wait for a month from Tuesday to do the tariffs. And then he goes up in front of his, semi State of the Union at the beginning of the week, says the tariffs are happening today and Tuesday, and the car makers love it. On Wednesday, he gives a waiver to all the car makers because apparently they loved it too much. And sometimes you don't want to get that close to something.
Yeah, too much winning.
Too much winning, and they got overwhelmed, and they said, please, we love it so much, we don't want to be a part of it. And he said, okay. And then today, he said, or yesterday, he said, actually, we're going to wait another month. What is your most reasonable explanation of this?
I mean, I think all of the candidates have about equal weight at this point, right? Because it's so hard to try to figure out any kind of straight line strategy. Have you read Yanis Varoufakis's essay on Trump's tariff policy and his like economic grand vision? Yanis is an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Left-wing Greek finance minister for the radical when the radicals were in there for like 6 months, and kind of a man about YouTube.
We had him on, I think it was probably this time last year.
Yeah.
I think.
Interesting guy. And he attempts to take the dots that Trump has put out there and sketch out what kind of ideology might fit into it, and square it with things Trump has been saying throughout his entire life. The exact same things he's been saying about China. Like if you go back to the 80s, he was saying about Japan,
right?
They're going to eat our lunch, etc. But his love of tariffs has been consistent. His deficit fear mongering and stuff around the debt and the trade imbalances, like that's all been consistent. So Giannis's argument is he's trying to create turmoil around the world, which will lead to dollar appreciation, which will lead to basically more exports. The United States will be able to produce more exports by changing the kind of balance of payments. He thinks that these other countries are getting a free ride.
Dollar depreciation.
Depreciation.
Right.
Yeah, dyslexic.
Right. Right. I mean, so in other words,
makes it cheaper for us. Yeah.
If the dollar is worth less, it will increase our exports because basically the price of our goods will go down if you're in a different country.
Yeah, and he thinks that being the world's reserve currency, this is Giannis's theory, is actually more of a burden than it is a benefit. And it's a burden because all of these central banks grab all of this American currency and they don't exchange it for their own currencies, and that artificially pushes the value of the dollar up, which then makes it harder for our manufacturing industry to sell to Europe. It makes it cheaper for us to buy from them, which means actually we're subsidizing their exporters. We get cheap crap out of it. And he thinks that has been a bad deal for the middle class. Like that. So that's the Giannis argument, that this is his analysis. If you flow from there, you would say, all right, well, he's creating all this chaos with Mexico and Canada to show Europe and China that he means business when he finally gets to it. But I would think that it would do the opposite, like that he looks like he's taking any power that his threats around tariffs had, like the power that he did have in January, is kind of gone, because who's going to take seriously his tariff threats anymore? So I think that's where the Giannis kind of assessment.
Well, that's the thing, is that
doesn't match up with what he's doing.
I've heard iterations of that theory that Giannis presented, and that I mean, it's a theory,
right,
but it doesn't feel like. But first off, like, why wouldn't you? And we should say the tariffs on China. He put 10% of tariffs on in 2019. Those have remained on. And they actually ended up costing farmers in some respect, because and frankly, other products that I can't remember what the designation is, but we have products that we actually have here sent to China to be processed and come back in, and then it raises the price for essentially American producers, in addition to the American consumers. So like nobody benefits. The American producers of these goods do not benefit from the foreign tariffs. But putting that aside, I don't understand, the interim step of doing it with Mexico and Mexico and Canada, who would be the last places you would want because of I think your cat is coming in. Okay. I thought that was no,
that is a cat. Hey, buddy.
Boom mic. That is a monster.
Yes.
The
potato.
I don't understand why you would do this first with Canada and Mexico, because that's like literally shooting yourself in the foot because of how much this stuff crosses the border. Products that are made in America, they go to Canada and then they come back and then they go back and then they come back because different parts of it are more suited to whatever their economy is. And then on top of which, I don't understand why you keep turning these on and off, because it makes it impossible for any business to plan anything. The only thing that it strikes me as is like, this is a pump and dump. Like
someone shorting the market, and this is
someone going long on something, someone going short on something, and then just selling with every announcement, knowing that these announcements are going to keep coming. Because outside of that, there's no other explanation for this.
At some point, it's going to be hard to sell and buy on them because
nobody's going to believe it.
Nobody's going to believe it. So he's going to have to figure out other ways to like.
Do you think that's possible? I mean, because I look, we saw it with the crypto stuff. That clearly is David Sachs just getting a payday. And, somebody apparently knew beforehand, because somebody was leveraging like several hundred millions of dollars on margin in the crypto market, at least. But it also just strikes me as
I think it's possible. Yeah.
But it can be both. I mean, I'm just trying to marry these two things with the Yanis Varoufakis theory about, his feeling that being the world's reserve currency is hurting us in negotiations. That could be the genesis of the idea, but his execution can be horrific because we know that he's an insane person who wants to go after our allies first because he thinks that's a show of strength, probably to the rest of the world, but he doesn't have the discipline to follow through on it. That's where crypto.
He's very mad at BRICS.
Mad at BRICS too, but that's where crypto can come in, right? Because if we're talking about he's bought into this idea that the United States being the leader for the world's currency and the dollar determining value. If he feels that's an unfair deal, hey, we can get a crypto reserve and essentially, right, like weaken the dollar ourselves. This is what Milei did in Argentina, I guess, just without the fiat currency piece.
Could have something to do with it. I don't. My guess of reading him is that he doesn't take crypto seriously and is just. But he's fine to just let his cronies just rip people off with it. It's like, just go have fun with it. It doesn't seem like the kind of thing that he.
I mean, he does pump and dumps for himself, right?
Yes, exactly. Tell me how I can make a buck off of this.
Yeah.
NFT. He does the NFTs, and he's if there's a scam, he's in on it.
The whole thing honestly feels like a less entertaining version, or at least a lot of this stuff feels like a less entertaining version of The Sopranos. I mean, it's just, he's just running it like a mafia don. And as long as we all have our own territory, and as long as I get a taste, you guys go to town. If it doesn't cost me,
it's a bust out.
Honestly, it sort of feels like that. All right, let's, I guess, we'll see what happens next with tariffs. I mean, somebody out there has got to be seeing in some market. I don't know if it's like, maybe oil or lumber or construction or, I'm not
if you were
sophisticated
trading
enough.
Canadian currency, maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, somebody out there is making a killing off of this, I think. And I have a feeling they're the initials of their last name could be Trump. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.